Now it's on you.
Futbol Americas, live and underway here on YouTube. On ESPN FC's YouTube channel. Herculez, Gomez, Sebi, Salazar. Herc, what do you think of our new digs here on the YouTube channel? Pretty sweet, huh?
It feels comfy. Comfy enough. I dig it. How you doing, Sebi?
I'm doing well. I know we don't have that much time with you because you're a very busy man. What else you got on your schedule tonight? Some work on Deportes, correct?
Yes, we'll be on Sports Center in about 35 minutes. They want to talk U.S. men's national team, and I'm sure maybe a player or two will come up.
Yep. So, of course, we're in the aftermath of the U.S. 7-1 victory over Grenada. Hit us up on the ESPN FC YouTube channel. Hit us up on Twitter. Herc's been tweeting all throughout the game. I have as well. If you use the hashtag Futbol Americas, we'll find you. Our great producer, Rob, who's helping us out tonight here on YouTube, will be feeding us some of your best questions as well. So, Herc, man, just thoughts off the top, man. The U.S. made it look easy. I know it's CONCACAF, but you still got to put up 7. That was a pretty good performance.
You still have to put up 7 and put things into perspective. Credit to Grenada for doing their absolute best and scoring their goal, and actually at times showing glimpses of a very good transition football. But this is what you expect, certainly from the greatest collection of American players this generation on paper, facing a team that doesn't have the same resources, doesn't have the same skill level, the same type of player playing in Europe. There was no MLS players in the roster today in this matchup. So, yeah, they were miles apart. It's what you expect on paper, but this is CONCACAF. That never really goes that way. I've been in this type of game where you play these minnows in CONCACAF and you think it should be easy. It's not. The conditions, the opponent, whatever you think may happen, can happen, the refereeing, et cetera, et cetera. And look at Mexico last night. Granted, it's a Mexico B team, if you will. It should have been a routine performance, and it was very, very complicated. A game that they could have easily slipped, and the result could have gone a different way, maybe a tie or something else. So you don't take these games for granted. Scoring 7 on opponents is never something you should sneeze at.
Yeah, I was kind of taken aback by the atmosphere there in Grenada. I didn't expect it to be so intense.
Great.
Have you ever played there? You got any other good stories like traveling in CONCACAF, in that part of CONCACAF specifically? Because I know you get some crazy pitches down there and just generally like some crazy backdrops. Let's never forget that's where the U.S. lost to Trinidad. It was in Cuba, and it was kind of one of those eerie situations.
Yeah, you were there for that, actually.
Crazy. I was there for that. Yikes.
Yeah, which explains a lot. We found the Mufa. We found the Jinx in the room. But I remember we were at Antigua, I think, and
sounds about right. Like third round of qualifying, like the round before the Hex or something.
It's exactly what it was. The round before the Hex, and we played them at home in Tampa. It was like an hour delay, and we ended up winning like 3-1 in that go around. People remember the 2014 World Cup qualifying in CONCACAF as something that the U.S. men's national kind of walked through. And the team who struggled was Mexico, and it was the Graham Susi goal versus Panama that got Mexico in on the back end, and then he went to the World Cup playoff versus New Zealand, I believe, where they ended up routing New Zealand, making it to the World Cup. But before that, the shoe was on the other foot. It was Mexico that was coasting, and it was the U.S. men's national team was us. I was with Jurgen Klinsmann and that bunch, and we were suffering. Landon Donovan had just taken his hiatus. He must have been somewhere like Cambodia at the time. And we were in Antigua. You had to win. You had to get this result with the way things were going. We were playing in a cricket stadium.
Yeah.
The thickest grass I've ever been in. But it's a monsoon, like this tropical storm going through all week and leading up to the game, and you're playing on mud puddles. And believe me, I believe it was like 70 minutes in, we weren't even going to the Hex. We were done. We were out. It took Listen to the name. It took Alan Gordon, okay, and Eddie Johnson coming off as second half subs for Eddie Johnson to score 2 goals, and we win that game. And then, well, World Cup qualifying 2014 ended up being a breeze in the long run. But that doesn't happen without that victory. And I can tell you, it seems easy on paper. You should win these games. And the program was in a different place back then, but they're never that easy.
Can I give a shout out to some of the folks in the comments here? Gio Rodriguez giving us a shout out. David says, love that y'all are doing this. Tony, what a game from Zendejas. Alejandro Zendejas coming in, getting a goal. Got what, like half an hour of play. I know that's one of the things, Herc, that you're probably going to be talking about over there on ESPN Deportes. Just how bummed do you think they're going to be tonight that Zendejas is scoring in a U.S. shirt?
Well, it's even more of a kind of like a slap in the face for a few reasons. Number one, this is something that Tata Martino and the Mexican Footballing Federation has completely fumbled. We've explained this many times on Futbol Americas. There was a situation while he was playing with Mexico in those friendlies, and he was at the height of his club career in Mexico with Club America, where he was scoring goals. He was a very important player for Club America, and Club America is getting ready to play a very important playoff game versus Puebla. And he's about to come onto the team bus. And literally before he steps foot onto the team bus, he gets approached and intersected and stopped by federation officials, the Mexican Federation officials. Hey, sign this. You need to sign this. It's a letter of intent. They literally tried slipping in the one-time switch before he went on the bus for him to sign. He rightfully so says, hey, can I look at this later? I'm about to go play a game. We can do this later on. No, you can sign this. Use this. He said, I'm going to take it to my representation. Shows it to his representation, speaks to his family. They realize what's going on. And then from there, the relationship went sour. Tata Martino never gave him the time of day. The federation kind of did him dirty. And here we are last night after everything I just told you. And Mexico probably played its worst 45 minutes that I've seen even before the Tata era. I don't think they played a game that bad or the first half that bad in about 3 or 4 years. So it tells you something. So off the heels of all that I just said, Zendejas scoring in his debut, it's going to make some news.
All right, more love for the folks in the comments here, especially Adam Snavely, legend. He points out it was the Alan Gordon game. And then he also points out, Herc, your free kick against Jamaica, which, of course, we remember quite frequently. That was on, if memory serves, September 11th, right, of 2012?
September 11th and in Columbus.
That's right.
You know, we had the unbelievable crowd there as well, very pro U.S. men's national team. So it was definitely a special game, but nothing like being in a situation where you know you're supposed to win. You're playing a team that's not even going to make the Hex, and there you are on the cusp of not even qualifying for the Hex. So one step further.
So speaking of Adam, he has a good question here. Do you guys think how much more free-flowing the attack looked tonight? Was less pressure without the World Cup to worry about? Getting out from under Berhalter's tighter system or something else? Maybe level of competition, probably a significant factor there as well. It's interesting, though, Herc, because we heard from Ricardo Pepi, right? Was asked to kind of compare work under Anthony Hudson to work under Greg Berhalter, and it seemed like he was saying at least the attacking players have a little bit more freedom under Hudson. I think you have to put it in context. You know, a CONCACAF Nations League game is not a World Cup game, both in terms of the importance of the game and the opponent.
Yeah, context matters and everything. It was Michelle, our colleague at TUDN, who asked the question. And Ricardo Pepi may have more freedom versus Grenada. The reality is you're playing against England or you're playing against Iran for a place in the knockout rounds in a World Cup. That freedom gets reduced. It doesn't matter who the coach is. That's a reality. But it's great that players feel like there's a change in mentality in the final third. Listen, one of the big questions I had for Anthony Hudson stepping into this role today was how can he get these players to see him as much more than an interim coach, and especially much more than an assistant coach, because a lot of those players, that's how they view him. He was an assistant coach with Greg Berhalter. So how do you step away from that role and kind of gain that respect? Well, he found a way. He let the players be a little bit more creative. Maybe that's in camp, maybe that's in the games, but he's finding little things, Anthony Hudson, and I'm convinced he has a burner because he's been listening to everything we've been saying, and he's pressing the right buttons. And granted, it's the opposition that matters a lot, but he's pressing the right buttons at the moment.
All right, so everybody in the world knows that Herc is firmly on the Berhalter out train. What you didn't know is
for
that
different reasons, though.
He's on the
for
Hudson.
Different reasons.
He's on the Hudson in train. Next thing you know, you're going to be campaigning for Anthony Hudson to be full time. Is that what I'm hearing here, Herculez Gomez?
No, Anthony Hudson can have a place in the program. I've got no issue with Anthony Hudson having a place in the program.
But he's covering himself in glory right now.
Absolutely covering himself in glory. I mean, you can go down the list of damn near perfect call-ups, roster selection, almost a perfect 11. The substitutions are very good. I was screaming off the top of my head, get Pulisic out, get him out, get him out, get him out. Comes out after a very good performance. Yep. The dual nat recruitment, the treatment of players that we've heard so far. He's pressing a lot of the right buttons, but let's be honest, it's a different type of animal to be the head coach of a national team, and he didn't cover himself in glory in his last gig with the Colorado Rapids.
Okay, there is a history, and I think we mentioned this on Futbol Americas. As you can see scrolling down there on the bottom of your screen at some point. You can watch us Mondays and Thursdays on ESPN plus 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 on the East Coast. All right, here I got some comments here. We'll get back to all that stuff. Zendejas, good addition to the fold. Fingers crossed for Balogun. Suddenly the 9 is a whole lot stronger if we can incorporate both players into the squad. Of course, Fowler and Balogun, a player that we'll talk about in a little bit. Pulisic and Zendejas at the same time, please. Most dynamic and creative players on the field tonight. Would love to see what builds in a full game. Gio looked rusty. Herc, let's talk about Gio Reyna. Let's talk about Gio Reyna for a second. He gets a start, which is what you wanted to see. You wanted to see him start in this game. You said as much on yesterday's edition of Futbol Americas. What'd you think of his performance?
And he got it centrally, Seb. That's something that a lot of people, even myself at times, have been asking to see of Gio Reyna. He got it centrally. The spaces today weren't centrally, especially early on. When you play this type of game, it's very congested. It's very narrow to start out defensively because the opponent's going to sit in. The opponent's going to not want to be hurt centrally. And I saw a lot of comments about Gio's body language. Yes. I think that's just Gio's body language to begin with.
Is that a problem?
No, like not in a personality trait body language. Like that's just the way he moves his hands. This is the way he moves on the field. You could see when he's moving, his gears are different than Zendejas, for example, who comes in and there's a change of pace. There's a change of gear. There's maybe a little bit more, intent in the way he goes in looking for a ball. Gio's very much, likes to pick and choose. He's very much a different player. I think today was more circumstantial of what was presented to him and that the spaces were out wide. I mean, the best player today was Christian Pulisic, and it wasn't even close. And Christian Pulisic operated heavily on that left-hand side and did all the damage on that left-hand side. That's where the spaces were. It wasn't centrally. And when the game opened up, that's when things centrally started to ease up for certain players, and Zendejas capitalized, and you saw more and more of Luca de la Torre advancing in that position and getting into the attack into the final third. But this is Gio right now, I think, minding his cues, just doing what he needs to do and not trying to ruffle feathers. And I think that's just Gio's body language to begin with. So I wouldn't read it too much into that. But one of my worries was his psyche. That's a reality. Listen, he's 20 years old, and his business is out there for the world to see. Not because he did it, because when he did it, when he acted that way, which was immature at the World Cup, it was handled. It was handled by all the accounts that we've heard from the players, from the reports. The players and Gio handled it. It was everything else that happened in the aftermath with the adults, his parents, the Berhalters, and it mixed Gio up in that kind of whirlwind of news he didn't need to be in. So who knows what his psyche's like? He's only a 20-year-old kid. It affects everybody different. We're in this social media era. I mean, he can open up his phone and just read horrible things about him or his family. It's a very difficult thing. So I'm going to give Gio a pass, even though I expect a lot out of him. I think there's still the best is yet to come with him.
So it's interesting you mentioned you were hearing a lot of feedback on Twitter about the body language. It's actually a question we got off Twitter here. Is Gio so good that he looks lazy, or does his work ethic just crap? I think whichever one of those two it is, Herc, he's got to be aware of it, because from now on, there's going to be not just one camera on him in a passing sense. Like there's going to be 2 or 3 cameras, and there's going to be everybody on USMNT Twitter watching everything that he does. So if his body language isn't great, and you're saying that's kind of a usual factor for him, it's going to be analyzed a lot in the coming weeks and months, especially when he's with the U.S. Maybe not so much at Dortmund. And I'm seeing it here in the comments. Luis Flores says, I'm over Reina. It's obvious we have talent to be without him. Pulisic continues to show he's the man.
I don't know how obvious that is tonight. Just because you played against Grenada. You've got to take things into context. He's a player that when moments are difficult, is very special in tight spaces and can pull something that is just magic. Like he did in El Estadio Azteca versus Mexico with that ridiculous run. Nothing came of it, but he also had the opportunity to Jordan Pifak in that play in the brief, limited time he was in. So he's a very talented player, but it's the same thing. And that's why you're absolutely right. He's got to be very careful and very mindful of what his history has shown, because in the youth national team programs with the United States, there's that history of him being more on the not as strong as of a work rate side. So he's got to be mindful of that, and all this plays into account. And maybe that's the reason why he wasn't playing with Dortmund. Mind you, Dortmund was, until they lost for the first time, I think it was Chelsea that lost it for the first time this year. They were one of the hottest teams in the world, and defensively they were very good. And there was a reason that Gio Reyna wasn't coming on. It's because maybe he wasn't helping them finish those games out, and they just didn't need him.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Christian Pulisic here. He had one goal, in the 49th minute, just beginning of the second half, as the U.S. ends up 7-1 winners over Grenada. Got a lot of comments about Captain America. Clocked in today, put in an honest day shift. Love that from him. Where else did we see here? Captain America, good performance. Yeah, people all over Christian Pulisic here. And then we got one question. I'm assuming this is coming from a Chelsea fan. How do we get Pulisic to play like this at the club level? It's interesting, Herc, because for all you talk about Gio Reyna's ceiling, and there are other talented players on the U.S. team as well, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams not there tonight. Christian Pulisic is the one guy on the field tonight that to me looked like he was better than everybody else on both teams.
Hands down.
And
hands down.
I think sometimes because he's been around the longest, and maybe we're the most critical, like the standard, the exigencia for him is the most. Like, we forget that he's still, for me, pretty significantly the best player on this team, the most productive player when it comes to the attacking, the final third, the important part of the game. And you saw that tonight. And I don't know that there's many guys in CONCACAF who are, maybe Alphonso Davies is the only other dude, who are consistently that dangerous and that much better than everybody else. You think so? You think?
Yeah.
Okay. I think Jonathan David's a really good player.
Consistency there.
Okay. All right. But man, every time Pulisic touches the ball and every time Davies touches the ball, you know there's something's going to happen.
We compare to Mexico
all the time. There's no Mexican
player. It's also not every time.
That.
Like, let's not get caught up in this recency bias because we're using the game versus Grenada, right?
Right.
But remember when the ESPN FC interview where he spoke to Graham Hunter, he was talking about Greg Berhalter benching him. He was talking about, sometimes I wanted to kill him. Why was he being benched? He had games where he wasn't quite playing like himself. There were times last cycle where we were asking when we were going to see the best of Christian Pulisic. So it's also not like the consistency has been there with Christian Pulisic. But this is why we don't talk about ceiling with Christian Pulisic, because he is the ceiling right now for every U.S. men's national team player. He is the bar. It's just a reality. He's the fastest player to get to over 10 goals and over 10 assists in the U.S. men's national team jersey. He continues to be the only player in modern history to actually play in a Champions League final and win it.
Right.
He is that guy right now for the U.S. men's national team. He's the face of the program. But Giovanni Reyna, we talk about his ceiling because he's not there yet. He's not at where Christian Pulisic has been. He's not garnered the attention. He's not garnered the transfer fee. He's not done the things that Christian Pulisic has done in the Champions League. It doesn't mean he can't, but that's why we talk ceiling with Giovanni Reyna. But you're right, Christian Pulisic right now is easily the best player in this organization.
All right, so somebody at Chelsea calls you up. They say, Herculez Gomez, what do we have to do to get the best out of Christian Pulisic for either the rest of the time he's at the club, which could be a few months, or there is, Herc, some talk of potentially a renewal of his contract now. Maybe he'll end up staying at Chelsea. What do they have to do to get the best out of him, to get the Christian Pulisic we saw tonight, other than maybe signing up for a game against Grenada?
Only two things. Only two things. It's all you have to do, and they're very easy. It's the easiest thing you could ever do. One, keep him healthy. Two, keep him happy. If you can do that, it's almost like Carlos Vela. You know, when Carlos Vela is in a
Mm.
good state of mind, he can do a lot of damage. You also know when Carlos Vela is physically fit, he's going to be a problem. But oftentimes over the years, the two haven't coincided. It's either one or the other and never both. And that's been the issue with Christian Pulisic is how do you get Christian settled, make him feel loved, but also keep him healthy? Because you could say whatever you want about his time at Chelsea, that under Frank Lampard, he finally got an opportunity. And during the pandemic, he proved he's one of the best players in the Premier League stat-wise. And then Frank leaves. And then in comes a new coach, and it's Thomas Tuchel. Oh, everything's going to be great. Thomas Tuchel actually gave Christian Pulisic his first team debut while at Dortmund. And guess what? Doesn't value him, plays him at right wing back. He's in and out of the lineup. And then, all right, Graham Potter comes in. Well, Graham Potter's going to have an opportunity. And it's the same thing. It's always something, fairly or unfairly, just or unjust. That's the situation, Christian Pulisic. But when he's happy and healthy, he proves to be a very, very important player.
All right. Let's keep discussing this game. US 7-1 winners. Let me run through your goal scores real quick. We had what? Pepe with a goal in the 4th minute right off the bat, assist from Christian Pulisic. He got another in the 53rd. Brendan Aronson in the 20th. Also a play that starts at the boot of Christian Pulisic. Weston McKennie with 2 goals in 3 minutes. Both kind of in the air, tap-ins. But, the first one was a volley. The second one a tap-in. Christian Pulisic after halftime, and then Alejandro Sendejas, 72nd minute, on a sick pass, Herc, from your boy, Luca De La Torre. I'm going to kind of run through the lineup here, but let's just talk about De La Torre, because I know you love him, and I know that tonight you must have loved that pass to Pepe, who walked it in on the near post on Grenada's goalie, who we have to shout out tonight as not his probably
suspect.
Best.
Yeah. Luca also had the little nice ball into Christian Pulisic. That's the one you're talking about with the goalkeeper, the opposition's goalkeeper. Luca was fine going forward. This is exactly what we knew Luca would be going forward. He's very, very good as he grows into the game. He's very tight, very good with the ball at his feet in the final third. He's got vision most guys don't have. He actually can play as a deep line playmaker, which is why when I said, hey, I would use Luca, Weston, and I said yesterday, Yunus Musa, they ended up going with Giovanni Reina there. It's a situation where he's got a little bit more of that responsibility as kind of a 6 to sit in, because you know that tactically Wes isn't that guy. Wes kind of just goes where the ball is. He feels the game, and you can't just tie him down. It doesn't matter how much you try to anchor him. He's always going to pull elsewhere, so you can't give him that responsibility there. Luca tried it a bit, and I think the goal that Grenada did end up scoring was Luca's man. But other than that, you knew that he would be there because you would have the majority of the ball. You have the lion's share, and he would be doing those things. I really think if you put a Luca, Yunus, Weston, if Tyler Adams isn't in the mix, that'll be your best bet in that midfield because they can support each other. Luca didn't really have too much support, so he got caught in that one play. But other than that, I thought Luca was great. He does what you want him to do when he has the ball at his feet. This is a guy that's very good with the ball at his feet, takes care of it, excellent vision, can play that final ball. But ultimately, I think it made people realize, even if it was a brief instance, that what used to be a historically strong position, that 6th position, now it's just Tyler Adams and like a big drop-off from the rest.
All right, I'm looking through some of the comments here. Fernando Cardenas, I'm guessing, says, remember, Ferreira scored 4 on Grenada. Let's temper this down.
Yeah.
Joe asks, what Luca played in the World Cup? Many forgot that Greg didn't use Joe and Luca.
I didn't. I lost a bet to you.
You did. We actually, when was it? And that was like 6 months before the World Cup. You said you were 99.99% sure that Luca De La Torre would not just play, but I think you said start a game in the World Cup.
That was the bet, start a game. And at that point, he wasn't even in the program. He wasn't even he was an afterthought.
You sure it wasn't after he'd kind of already been brought back in and started to play?
No. Yeah. But he wasn't who he is now.
Okay.
It wasn't a lock to be in the 18.
Daryl says Brian Reynolds look good going forward. Lucio says, is Leeds United happy after today's U.S. men's national team game?
Ooh, that's a good one for Brendan Aronson, because Brendan's a guy who I think desperately needed a good showing today.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, he was one of the most productive players in the lead up to the World Cup. Like, we used to call him Mr. Futbol Americas, Mr. Run It Back, because he constantly would show up goals and assists in our program. And about the time when he went to Leeds and he was about to go to the World Cup, everything kind of started going south for him. And he gets injured, and then he starts playing with the reserve side, and he's coming in off the bench. And when he comes in, his team's giving up leads. They're giving up goals. It's been a situation that's been kind of rough. The man who brought him there, Jesse Marsch, gets fired. It's been a lot of change for Brendan Aronson. He desperately needed a good showing.
Yeah. Started the season off. You felt great, right, for Leeds, and then it's kind of cooled off ever since. So big goal for him as well. Let's run through this lineup then, because this is what are we calling it? A 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1? What did you think it was today? How did it look, Herc?
I guess you could call it a 4-2-3-1, but it's more like a 4-1-2-3. Yeah, honestly, all these 4-3-3 are different variations.
Yes,
people like to get cute with them.
It's either four at the back or something different, right?
I read Pep Guardiola's a different way of winning, and now let me tinker around, and this is what this midfield is, and this advanced analytical tell me this.
Speaking of coaches, speaking of tactics, Herc, anonymity anymore. Let me get that right. Anonymity anymore is a tough one to say. My life will be complete once we stop talking about Greg Berhalter. Lefty Buckle says, Mourinho, USMNT coach with Christian Pulisic. Herc, I think we've talked about Mourinho at some point as a long shot candidate on Futbol Americas for the U.S. job. What do you think? You like it? Could he get more out of this team than Anthony Hudson, than Greg Berhalter?
Yeah, sure. Can you afford him?
Come on. U.S. Soccer can afford him. U.S. Soccer
they can afford $16 million a year.
Anthony says, "What's up, Herc and Sebi?"
I didn't hear what you said there. Can they afford 16 a year?
I don't know, man. U.S. Soccer, they're hosting a World Cup in 2026. Surely you're gonna make some money there.
Okay, in 2026, you still got to make that money.
Sometimes you can borrow against future earnings.
They've been literally sued by their own players for the better part of a decade.
Right now, all that's in the past. So I'm sure there's money growing on trees over there. Let me get to some of the Twitter comments here, because I know we got to cut you loose for your Sports Center hit real quick while I'm looking at some of these. Tell us where you're going to be in about 10 minutes time.
I'm going to be on ESPN Deportes in Spanish, 7:30 Pacific time, 10:30 Eastern. I'll be doing Sports Center with Sergio Dip, our good friend. If you know Sergio, you know Sergio, and certainly talking the U.S. men's national team, and most likely a little Alejandro Sendejas will come up.
So what's interesting is you started this conversation talking, or making at least a comparison to Mexico's performance last night against Suriname. And I think it's worth noting, right, that like Mexico in that game really suffered. It was not a good performance from Mexico.
Right.
And sure, there are excuses, and we kind of talked about them on the show last night. The U.S.
The A and B squad.
Yes.
More of a B squad.
But the U.S. here, and the U.S. could throw excuses out, surely. I'm sure they could find, hey, this guy's not here, that guy's not here. They go away. They don't have a coach. This isn't the long-term coach. They win 7-1. We know that in Mexico, right, the exigencia, the demand of the press is harsh on the national team. So I wonder what you think, like what you could tell us about what you heard today, maybe last night on ESPN Deportes, in the aftermath of that, comparing to what we're talking about now, which is like people feeling really good about this U.S. team coming off a 7-1 win. Because I think for Mexico fans, I'll certainly say for people that I might know in my household, it was not a good feeling at all last night, despite the fact that they, also won. I don't know why I put that in air quotes. They did also win, but it didn't feel like a victory.
No, not at all. And it's one of those things like Diego Coca suffers from foot and mouth. Like, just don't say anything.
Yeah.
Don't say like the way we play really matters and we're going to give you a good show, et cetera, and then go out and do that. You don't have to divide the group, especially if the pool's not that deep to begin with. Don't divide the group and make it clear that one group is a B team that's going to play the first game away from home on turf against a Suriname that really made it difficult on them, but physically just empowered Mexico. For the first time in a long time, I saw Mexican players that were scared to play. They looked physically afraid of getting into tackles. They were outpaced, outmatched, oftentimes outthought, especially centrally. It was worst case scenario for Diego Coca as far as getting a win.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, worst case scenario would have been just losing or a tie. But as far as getting a win, it was as bad as you could have possibly done it. It was the first 45 minutes were the worst I've seen since the Tata Martino era, probably worse. It was that bad. And today, The headlines, one of them read, Coca sin gas. And Coca referring to like a Coca-Cola, sin gas, without gas. It's like
without bubbles.
Drinking flat soda.
Yeah, exactly.
So they were all over the place. All the talk shows this morning, the debate shows, were all about Diego Coca. We're all about how bad they looked. There's a segment that they do on Futbol Picante, and it's like aprobado, reprobado. Like, do you pass? You either pass or fail?
Yeah.
Yes, literally. Only Acevedo was getting the pass. Everybody else was getting the fail. Yeah, right. So it was that type of situation, and it continues to today.
All right, I got to ask you about Fuller and Balogun before we let you go, because we got to let you go in a few minutes, but I am going to run through some of these questions or these comments real quick. Actually, I'll ask you about Balogun since we got the graphic up. Last night on Futbol Americas, we showed you he was at the Orlando Magic game. I guess I'm not a big baseball guy, but I'm thinking it's spring training down there in Orlando, so he got a Yankees number 9 as well. I mean, this is the VIP treatment, Herc. Of course, if you don't know about this kid, 17 goals in Liga, born in Brooklyn, can play for US, England, or Nigeria. And I think with every passing moment, Herc, the buzz around this kid among US fans grows, and the feeling that he's going to choose the US grows as well.
Yeah, I would say it grows as well. I mean, if you're telling me that he's in the U21 program from England and he doesn't get called up for the full program, and when the list comes out, he sends this cryptic message about wanting to go where it feels loved, and then Marcus Rashford gets injured, and you would think he would get called up. It would be logical, and he doesn't. They decide not to bring anybody in, and all of a sudden he pulls out mysteriously from the U21 camp in England, and he's going to take a 10-hour flight across the Atlantic, over 7,000 miles, Seb, to go to Orlando of all places, and it happens to be the same place that the U.S. men's national team is staying at, the same resort that they're staying in, where he's got friends like Yunus Musa, he's got friends like Brian Reynolds, he's got other friends, I believe Taylor Booth as well, Timothy Weah, who's not there, and all of a sudden Anthony Hudson's been in contact, these players like Matt Turner have been in contact, and you're seeing him do the rounds. It feels like an official college recruiting trip.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like. And the ball's in his court. You wanted to feel the love. U.S. men's national team Twitter came out in full force and showed him the love. He's been getting it everywhere he goes. The Orlando Magic, the New York Yankees. What else is there around there? Disney World. I'm sure he's gonna pop up in there.
ESPN. We'll spring for the tickets. We'll take it out of the Futbol Americas budget. We'll get you those passes.
But right now, all signs point to this man is enjoying his time in the U.S. and will most likely make a decision that if I were to lean one way or the other, I would think he goes to the U.S.
All right, Herc. Speaking of going, you got to go because you got to go do your ESPN Deportes Sports Center hit. Check him out over there. Shout out to Brian Beast. He says, you guys are the GOATs. Jonathan says, our first ever away win. That's right. It's been a while since the U.S. won away from home, except for, of course, beating around at the World Cup. Herc rocking the Patty's Irish Pub. That is a soccer shirt, correct? Somehow, some connection with Wrexham there. Shout out to Gerardo, who gave us a shout out here in the comments as well. Matt's big up from Bristol, England, not Bristol, Connecticut, Bristol, England. So thanks to everybody who tuned in. This was kind of ad hoc, but we had a good time. We'll probably do it again as we see the need to after some of these big games. So Herc, go enjoy your hit on ESPN Deportes. We'll see you on SportsCenter. And thanks everybody for watching. U.S. big 7-1 winners over Grenada. On Monday, we'll see you live 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Oh, no, sorry. Not 8:30 p.m. Eastern time.
No.
After the U.S. against El Salvador finishes up, which will be around 9:30 Eastern time, 6:30 Pacific on ESPN+. That'll be on ESPN+. For Herc, Seb, producer Rob Moore, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on Monday on Futbol Americas.